let me talk about the NXT call-ups, because one of the things they announced on Raw and SmackDown this week, they aired a vignette with highlights of 6 new NXT call-ups coming up very soon. There's no specific dates on these, but they're coming up very soon in the weeks to come. Lars Sullivan, who we already knew about. EC3 is getting the call-up. Now, he was supposedly going to be called up after SummerSlam, was hurt. I think he suffered a concussion, and so that pushed things back. He never did get called up. Now he is. Lacey Evans, Nicky Cross, and Tucker and Otis of Heavy Machinery. Those are the 6 individuals who are getting called up. Let's start with Lars Sullivan here. Sullivan is being promoted as a monster. And I still think the best place for him is on a brand with fewer monsters, with fewer people who look like him, who are as big as him, who are as tall as him, or bigger than him in some cases. Braun Strowman, for example, is much bigger than Lars Sullivan is. I just think Raw has enough big men already. SmackDown is where he should land. That's assuming, of course, he can recover from the drubbing he received on Twitter this week from the now former SmackDown Women's Champion. Becky Lynch wins for Savage Tweet this week. Ronda Rousey wins for Most Bizarre. The two of them have been back and forth on Twitter again, going at each other. And they were talking about the Raw where Becky put Ronda in the disarmor. This was the Raw episode before Survivor Series where the SmackDown ladies invaded. Becky led the invasion charge on that show. And again, she put Ronda in the disarmor backstage, right? Becky had called her a little weirdo in this tweet. And Ronda said, well, you're the one jumping on me while I'm getting changed in the locker room. And then she put a bunch of hashtags in there, including this very odd one. Hashtag, I know you left with my underwear. Yes, Ronda Rousey accused Becky Lynch in storyline, I hope in storyline, of stealing her underwear. In a creepy way, it kind of makes sense now why Becky calls herself the man. So Becky, in response, said, just how hard were you kicked in the jaw that one time, you little freak? Alluding to the UFC fight where Ronda got kicked in the face and beaten by Holly Holm, which really was the beginning of the end of her career. Well, Lars Sullivan, why do I bring all this up now? Well, Lars Sullivan, of all people, thought it would be wise to stick his nose in the middle of all of this. Would not be the first time that he has posted something stupid on social media. He took exception to Becky calling Ronda a freak. He said, he's the only freak around here. Becky then posted a photo of Conor McGregor at that famous UFC press conference where Jeremy Stevens talked about, he was talking shit, and Conor is kind of sitting in a row in front of him. And Conor just turns around, he's like, who the fuck is that guy? He's like, he doesn't know who the fuck it is. And so she just posts that image, and everybody knew what that meant. Lars then pulled the old tweet and delete out of embarrassment. Becky noticed this and said, I think I broke Lars. And at that point, he just tweeted, just got nailed by the man, had to delete. Look at this guy, buried before he even makes his debut on TV. He would be best suited to keep his mouth shut, I think, until he makes his debut. And that's also something else. It's a minor thing that annoys me, but part of the reason I wonder if why some of these people don't really get over the way that in another bygone era they might have. You could say, oh, work rate, things are different now. People put more stock in work rate than they would have, 20, 30 years ago in WWE. And that's probably true, although I wouldn't, look, you had to know how to work then too. You couldn't just be, a warm body in the ring. If that's the case, then Giant Gonzalez would have been the fucking world champion. When you have a guy like Lars Sullivan, who they're building as this monster, right, and this freak, and then he goes on social media, he goes on Twitter, and he says dumb shit. I don't know. I mean, it takes away, I think, from the aura they're trying to build with some of these people, right? Am I the only one who feels that way? I know it's a minor thing. It's not that big of a deal, but I do think social media takes away a lot of the mystique from a lot of these people, and that's got to be part of why they just don't seem to get over the way they used to, or just be these larger-than-life personalities the way that they used to. That's one of the drawbacks, I think, frankly, of social media. It humanizes these people. when there was a mystique about them and you didn't really hear from them or see them outside of what you saw on television, I think that worked a lot better. Especially for someone like Lars, the way that he's being portrayed. So yeah, he didn't do himself any favors there. But anyway, he's on his way up. We already knew that. I hope he goes to SmackDown and not Raw. EC3. EC3 has a look that Vince McMahon, I'm sure, probably loves. In fact, he probably took one look at him and said, I want that guy, and so he's being called up. He's got charisma. I've yet to see any classic EC3 matches in TNA or in NXT. Unless you count the ladder match he was involved in when he first came to NXT. But, you know, he was one of 6 guys. I mean, I guess you could count that one. But now he's going to have his chance. I think he should go to Raw. I think he should be a heel, even if he comes in initially as a babyface. It's the Bobby Roode thing. When Bobby Roode was in NXT, he was already a heel. That was the right role for him. When he got promoted, he debuted as a babyface. And I thought, well, all right, this is stupid, but maybe it's just a temporary thing. Give it a few weeks. Well, here we are. He's been on the main roster at least a year now, probably more. And he's still a babyface. Now he's one half of the Raw Tag Team Champions. Good for him. But boy, the Bobby Roode on the main roster is not the Bobby Roode that I was hoping for when he left NXT. In the case of EC3, he's a babyface right now in NXT. And probably will be when he first debuts, but I wouldn't keep him that way for very long. Because I just don't think that's the best role for him. Nicky Cross. Nicky Cross is very good. Putting her back with Sanity is the predictable move, but what have they done with Sanity since calling them down to the main roster? Nothing. Oh, this week. Oh, they shook things up, right? This week they finally showed up again on television. I forgot they were even employed. But they showed up on television again this week because it's a new era with new faces that aren't really new, even though they've been around. We just haven't done anything with them, but they're new. It's like you buy a shirt, right? And I've had this with dress shirts for work. You buy a shirt, you wear it, and all of a sudden one day you stop wearing it. It's in your closet, you forget it's in there. Years could go by. 5 years later, you're in your closet poking around. Hey, look at this. Here's a shirt I haven't worn in a long time, and you start wearing it again. All of a sudden, what's old is new again. You didn't buy that shirt. That shirt's been sitting in the fucking closet for 5 years, collecting dust. All of a sudden, what's old is new again because you haven't used it. That's what they do with their talent. Their talent, it's like a shirt that they buy, and they wear it one time, they get bored with it, so they put it back in the closet, and eventually they remember they have it, and they figure, well, we should probably start using it again. Let's start wearing it again, at least for a few weeks until we get bored. And then we'll go play with our new toys. And that's how they've treated Sanity, like an old shirt. So why would I want Nicky Cross in her debut to be put back with a faction that was DOA? Just because they're back on TV this week doesn't mean I have any faith they're going to do something with them. You put Nicky back with Sanity, and my fear is that they do more to drag her down than she does to prop them up. I think the SmackDown Women's Division needs new faces. I think she should probably go there. So at least they'll have the option if they want to, with them being on the same brand, of linking her back up with Sanity whenever it may be convenient for them to do so. But to me, it's not an automatic that she should end up back with them. In fact, I'm in favor of her not going back to Sanity, at least not right away. Lacey Evans. Lacey is tall. She's blonde. And so you know that she's going to get a big push. No doubt about it. She would get pushed with those attributes, even if she didn't have any real in-ring talent. But in this case, she does have talent. There's other women I would have preferred to see her over her first, but she's good. She's good enough. Comes from a military background. I'm sure they'll push that fact. I think she was a Marine. So in terms of work ethic, I'm sure her work ethic is top-notch. And she's working to improve and working to get better. If she keeps improving, I think she could turn into something special. I just thought that's what NXT was for. Silly me. But it feels less and less like that's the case these days. And then there's Tucker and Otis. Heavy machinery. They've been a favorite act of mine now on NXT for a while. You've heard me talk about Otis Dozovic before. The man looks like a walking, talking human version of an old King Kong Bundy LJN action figure from 1985. The way he walks with his arms hanging down, it's so unnatural. It's just like he's like a walking box that has arms sticking out of it. And of course, I've seen people online make the Chris Farley comparison. Chris Farley was a funny SOB. Now imagine if he was also a champion Greco-Roman wrestler. You now have Otis Dozovic. He may also be the first Serbian WWE star. I don't know if his parents or his grandparents are from there. He wasn't born there. He was born here. I know that. But I can't think of another main roster WWE star from a Serbian background. He may be the first. Whatever you do, just don't watch a Serbian film. I made that mistake many years ago, and it traumatized me greatly. Sean Ross Sapp on the Fightful.com podcast said that Vince McMahon is very high on Otis. He took one look at him and he loved him, because of course he did. Is that good enough, though? Because the track record for tag teams from NXT is not good. You look at the Revival. You look at AOP. Sanity, who I just mentioned. They kept American Alpha together for all of 5 minutes before they broke them up. The Vaudevillains. Even Enzo and Cass, although their downfall was due to a bunch of different circumstances. They were at least getting a push. Point is, NXT tag teams generally do not get called down to the main roster and do well. I could see Vince liking Otis enough to break them up and transition him into a comedy role as a single down the road. And he is very entertaining. I am not against the idea of him doing comedy stuff. Let that be known. But he could be doing more than just comedy if you give him the chance. So when I look at all 6 of these people, and I think which one of them has the potential to be the next big breakout star, though I do like Otis, I don't think it's anybody from this bunch. I don't think it's any of these 6, including Lars, who might get a big push out of the gate. I don't see that one person or team in here that's going to go on to, in 2, 3, 5 years, we're going to look back and see them main eventing and headlining. I just don't see that with Lars. I don't see it with EC3. I don't think it's anybody from this group. And if I had to pick one, honestly, but you know what? If I had to pick one from this bunch of the 6 people, it's probably Lacey Evans as the one who I could see being a dominant champion at some point. But I really don't think this particular group is going to yield anybody like that. When they're ready to call down Aleister Black or Matt Riddle, that'll be a different story. Those are 2 names who I think could be main event players on the main roster sooner rather than later.